The safe half of your retirement isn't safe. It just hadn't been tested. You were taught to split your money in two: stocks for growth, bonds for safety. The bonds are the ballast, the heavy, boring anchor that holds everything steady when the market gets rough. Stocks take the risk. Bonds keep you upright. Then 2022 arrived, and the anchor didn't just slip. It had the worst year in its recorded history, and it dragged you down at the exact moment it was supposed to hold you up. For 40 years, the arrangement worked. Whenever stocks fell, bonds usually rose, or at least held. That is the entire logic of the classic 60-40 portfolio. 60% in the engine, 40% in the ballast. When one side lurches, the other steadies the ship. Retirees lean on this harder than anyone. The closer you get to drawing an income, the more you move into the safe side. Bonds, treasuries, the things that aren't supposed to move. By the time you retire, that safe half might be the larger half. You are trusting it to be the part of the structure that does not fail, which is exactly why it matters when it does. If you want the engineering view of your money instead of the brochure version, subscribe to the Blueprint Room. One briefing a week, taking the whole plan apart and rebuilding it properly. Hit subscribe and let's get back to the failure. Here is what nobody tells you about a bond. Its price and interest rates sit on a seesaw. When rates go up, the price of the bond you already own goes down. Always. That is not a glitch, it is the mechanism. And the length of that seesaw has a name: duration. A short bond barely moves when rates change. A long bond swings hard. Duration is literally the load rating of your safe asset, how much stress it can take before it buckles. Almost no retiree knows the duration of their bonds. They see the word bond, they hear safe, and they stop reading the spec sheet. But an engineer never trusts a beam by its name. He reads its rating, because he knows the day will come when the load arrives. In 2022, it arrived. In 2022, to fight inflation, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates faster than at almost any time in modern history. The seesaw did what it always does: rates up, prices down, but with a violence no living investor had seen. The broad US bond market fell about 13%, its worst year since the index began in 1976. Treasuries, the risk-free asset, fell more than 12%, their worst year since 1973. Intermediate treasuries posted their steepest loss on record going back to 1926. And the longer the duration, the deeper the wound. Long bonds didn't lose 10%, they lost a third of their value. The load rating you never checked decided how hard you fell. Now, here is the part that should change how you think. Bonds didn't fall while stocks rose. They fell with stocks. The ballast and the engine went down together. The one job the safe half existed to do: to hold when the risky half dropped. It failed at the precise moment you needed it. The hedge wasn't a hedge. It was a second bet you didn't know you'd placed. A flag for anyone holding safe bonds for retirement. The fix is not to dump them. It's to read the rating. The failure in 2022 wasn't that people owned bonds. It was that they owned the wrong duration for their timeline. Long, rate-sensitive bonds held by people who needed the money soon. The rule an engineer would give you is simple. Match the load rating to the load. Money you need in 2 years belongs in short-duration bonds that barely move. Money you won't touch for 15 years can sit in longer bonds that pay more and have time to recover. The disaster comes from a mismatch, a long swinging beam where you needed a short, rigid one. That is the secret the brochure leaves out. Bonds is not one thing. It is a spectrum of load ratings. And your job is to put the right rating under the right part of your life. So how do you build a safe side that is actually safe? You engineer it instead of trusting it. You ladder it, hold bonds maturing in 1 year, 2, 3, so something is always coming due and nothing is forced to sell at a loss. You match duration to when you need each dollar. And for the part that must survive inflation, you use inflation-linked bonds, so rising prices don't quietly corrode the safe half the way they corrode cash. None of this is exotic. It is reading the spec sheet and building to it. This is the lesson 2022 carved into the record. Safe is not a label you can trust. It is a design spec you have to verify. A bond labelled only safe, sitting beside an identical one labelled with its full rating. A stamp reads, "Rated for what?" The retirees who were hurt weren't reckless. They did the responsible thing. They moved to bonds. They just never asked the one question an engineer always asks. Rated for what? A safe asset you don't understand isn't safety. It's a risk wearing a calmer name. Read the rating. Build the safe half to spec. Then it will do its job on the day the load finally comes. If you'd rather understand your money than be reassured about it, subscribe to the Blueprint Room. One briefing a week, building the whole structure piece by piece, and we are not done yet. Site report. 5 findings. 1. The safe half of your retirement is bonds, and safe is a spec, not a label. 2. A bond's price falls when rates rise. Duration is how hard it falls. Its load rating. 3. In 2022, bonds had their worst year in recorded history, and they fell with stocks. The hedge failed when you needed it. 4. The damage came from a duration mismatch, long swinging bonds where short rigid ones belonged. 5. Engineer the safe side, ladder it, match duration to your timeline, use inflation-linked bonds for the long haul. Read the rating. Class dismissed.